Good morning, Grace-Toti and others. We hope and pray that you are keeping well. As the weeks and months roll on, you might say drag on, we are praying for everyone's mental and spiritual health as much as for your physical health. You know, the combination of hearing about nearby suffering and then fearing for your own suffering and then this nagging uncertainty about the future, it kind of wears on you after a while. Writers are saying it's like having a civil war in your country. You don't want to see the news, but you can't help yourself, and you don't want to miss out on something important. But there's this anxiety fatigue. Your mind is preoccupied, and it's hard to focus. And this anxiety and uncertainty is besides the lockdown itself. Kids home from school, inability to see your loved ones, maybe work loss or disruption at work, destabilizing economies and governments around the world, and now corrupt government leaders capitalizing on the pandemic. No surprise there. Many are battling anxiety and depression. So some thoughts today. My sons are writers, and one thing they point out is that in every story, the key character has an arc, A-R-C. At the beginning of the book or the movie, they're one way, and the story moving across this arc is about how they change by the end of the story. Often the story moves them from getting what they want to becoming what they need to be, or doing what they need to do. An example would be Lion King, and watching Simba change from the life he wants, just to be king, the easy life, to a runaway, to no worries, problem-free living, Hakuna Matata, to the position he needs to take as a responsible king. Moving across the arc, there are a series of inciting incidents where he has to adapt what he needs to do and begin giving up what he wants. There's failure, and then there's a crisis at the climax of the story where he succeeds. And this is typical of almost every good storyline, even Jesus' life. Okay, God has written your story. You are moving across this arc and you've hit a crisis. Hey, we've all hit a crisis. God is moving us through this crisis to make us into what we need to be, not what we want to be, not what we used to be. This crisis can make you more like Jesus. We need to be people of the Word. We need to not love the world or the things that are in the world. We need to talk to God a lot more than we have been doing. A life of comfort without fear or significant challenges can make us spiritually fat and unfit. Such a life has a really awful plot line. It's just a boring story. Some of God's best characters, some of God's best leaders are made during crises. So many works of art, so many hymns are the product of difficult times. Let me give you another example. Joseph Gilmore graduated from seminary in the divided states of America. I use that term because during his last semester, 9 of the states seceded from the Union, declaring themselves no longer part of the United States, dividing the country in two, the Union North and the Confederate South. The shooting began a month after Joseph graduated, and after another 9 months, both sides were in full-out war with tens of thousands of men dying on multiple battlefields. Brothers killing brothers, cousins fighting each other in opposite armies. Young Pastor Gilmore received an invitation to speak at First Baptist Church down in Philadelphia, just 200 kilometers from where some of the battles were taking place. He was just doing pulpit supply for a couple of Sundays while the pastor was away. While there, he heard the terrible stories of what was happening on the battlefields. He saw some of the results. The believers in this church were like us, hearing of suffering and death, fearing it might come closer, confident in God's goodness and sovereignty, but very uncertain about the future. Joseph wanted to comfort and encourage the congregation. Like Pastor Des and I have both done in different devotionals in this series, he turned to Psalm 23. As he began to prepare for the midweek prayer service, he read the familiar psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me. The Spirit struck him with how wonderful this phrase was. He leadeth me, in the King James. The words took hold of his heart as they had never done before. How beautiful. We may be fearful, but we are not alone. Even though we walk through dark valleys, our God is still there. He is close. He is leading. Not just us, but me. He leadeth me. He's not just walking and doing stuff without me in mind, and I'm following along like some annoying companion, but he wants me to come with him. He is leading me. Years later, Joseph wrote, "It was the darkest hour of the Civil War. I did not refer to that fact. That is, I don't think I did. But it may subconsciously have led me to realize that God's sovereign leadership is the one significant fact in a believer's experience. That it makes no difference how we are led or where we are led, so long as we are sure that God is leading us." Psalm 23, he continued, was a blessing to all of us that evening. At the close of the meeting, a few of us at the home of my host kept on talking about this idea, "He leadeth me." And then and there, on the back of my message notes, I penciled a poem, talking and writing at the same time, then handed it to my wife and thought no more about it. He leadeth me, O blessed thought, from verse 2 of the Psalm 23. O words with heavenly comfort fraught, whate'er I do, where'er I be, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, by his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me. From verse 4, sometimes mid scenes of deepest gloom, sometimes where Eden's bowers bloom, by waters still or troubled sea, still 'tis his hand that leadeth me. Lord, I would place thine hand in mine, nor ever murmur, nor repine, or fret, or express discontent. Content whatever lot I see, since 'tis thy hand that leadeth me. And then picking up on Psalm 23:6, and when my task on earth is done, when by thy grace the victory's won, even death's cold wave I will not flee, since God through Jordan leadeth me. He leadeth me. By his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me. Now, a funny postlude to this story. Joseph said he passed off the poem to his wife and forgot about it. She secretly sent it to a Boston newspaper, hoping to encourage many other people with the poem, and it was printed. She didn't know that, but the famous gospel song composer William Bradbury saw it and put it to a tune and included it in his next hymn book. Several years later, after America's Civil War was over, Pastor Joseph Gilmore went to Rochester, New York to preach. Going into the main hall, he picked up a hymnal to see what they were singing at this church, and he opened exactly to his own hymn, He Leadeth Me. His wife's secret plan had turned out better than she had ever dreamed. So the Lord is our shepherd. We lack nothing we need. His powerful presence nearby is about the only thing that I know that can give us peace in the midst of a pandemic, to lie down and rest. And what's best is that he is leading us through the story he has written for us. I don't want to fret or complain. Nothing worse than fussy sheep. I want to be his faithful follower, quiet and strong and guided by his eye. So take a few minutes this morning and listen to this inner city evangelistic group known as A Cappella singing He Leadeth Me.
He leadeth me, oh blessed thought, oh words with heavenly comfort fraught. Whate'er I do, where'er I be, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, by his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful follower I amid scenes of deepest gloom. Sometimes where Eden's bowers bloom, by waters still or troubled sea, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, He leadeth me, by His own hand He leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by His hand He leadeth me.